This is the last part of a 3-part video. Parts 1 and 2 are already up, so you might want to watch those videos before this one. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to see more videos from my channel.
Who's the girl next door living in the haunted mansion?
You better learn my name, goodbye and
Hush, please.
Easily my favorite film from Laika, but this movie was quite low on this list for a long while, and I had only watched it twice. And I had this feeling that I needed to move Coraline up more since any new additions would kick it off the list into the abyss of honorable mentions. So I was looking forward to revisiting it as part of a marathon I was doing on Letterboxd, and upon rewatch, I was baffled. I have never been this tempted to give a movie a 10 out of 10. Not even Belle sent me down that spiral. Without a doubt, the one movie on this list that moved up the most spots by 20. The novel recently becoming my favorite book of all time probably has something to do with that. A story about a girl named Coraline who moves into an old house with her family and comes to find a bricked up passage, which opens up to a new world at night. When she travels through, she comes across a paradise where everything is exactly as she wants, with the catch that the people have button eyes, and slowly but surely she begins to realize the horror of what she stumbled upon and seeks to escape the clutches of her dubbed other mother. A large part of why this movie is so incredible is because of the amazing direction from Henry Selick and a spectacular display of writing talent from Neil Gaiman, who did write the original novella. And while there are notable differences between the movie and the book, mainly Coraline's personality change, the order of certain events, and how exactly Coraline defeats the Beldam, the film keeps the horrifying nature of the book alive by being subtly disturbing in its imagery and impeccable set design. Dakota Fanning as Coraline was excellent casting. She perfectly sells this bratty and obnoxious kid who gradually comes into her own as she is determined to beat the Beldam and save herself and her loved ones. And Terry Hatcher as the Beldam? Come on, she's awesome. And that final fight in that spider web is genuinely harrowing as it is thrilling. On top of that, you also have the amazing fluid claymation, one of the best horror soundtracks in anything, and the side characters are all very entertaining without ever really overstaying their welcome. Admittedly, the novella is better by a bit, but this will always be one of my favorite movies, period. I may have briefly touched on this before, but Naoko Yamada is my favorite director ever. The way she conveys such powerful emotion through subtle body language and the way she frames certain scenes is unbelievably magnificent. So it's no surprise that I love Tamako love stories so much. Even more so considering that the Tamako Market series might actually be my favorite series from Yamada. The show follows a plucky and upbeat girl named Tamako who gets herself wrapped up in a multitude of slice-of-life adventures at the marketplace she lives in, all while a talking bird arrives in search of a bride for a faraway prince. And while I absolutely love this show so much, being my second favorite show ever, the movie honestly has an edge not because of its bigger budget and adorable shipping fuel, but also because of how genuinely powerful it is in displaying the adolescent anxieties of growing up. I think it's a mistake to write this off as a cutesy, mushy romance film because at its core, Tamako Love Story is a distressful character study on this blissfully optimistic character and how she reacts to the terrifying nature of change. In the series, Tamako is this happy-go-lucky girl who is living day by day, content with where she is in life, counting on her family and friends for support, but now with school soon being over, her friends are talking about where they're going to go in life, and while Tamako will remain at the mochi shop, her friends are going to leave her behind, going out into the world to accomplish their dreams. Mochizo will go into film, Kana will go into construction work, and so on and so forth. Everyone she knows is talking about the future, and her? She's never even considered the future. Her entire world is being turned upside down, and she's not only going to have to accept that change, but if she wants to tell Mochizo how she feels and reciprocate his feelings, she needs to do it in time before he leaves. But even then, the thought of facing her fears scares her so much, and she's unable to do anything about it until she's reminded of the support she has from her family and friends, living or gone. It's a mature and anxiety-inducing situation that's surprising to see coming from what is otherwise a wholesome and joyful franchise. Putting all that aside, the animation is stunning, all the characters are lovable, and the romance itself is adorably sweet. My one minor issue, and it's kind of a weird bone to pick, but Mochizo apparently films Tamako when she's not looking. At least it looks like she's okay with it. But yeah, a masterpiece of a story that is definitely one of the best coming-of-age movies.
Well, you look like yourself, but you're somebody else, only it ain't on the surface.
I've covered Belle a lot, more than any other movie on this channel, but that just shows how much I love this beautiful masterpiece that has gotten better with every rewatch. My favorite movie from 2022, and my third, technically second, favorite film of the decade so far. Belle is a widely famous online celebrity run by Suzu, a shy and insecure student who is struggling with losing her mother at a young age. During one of her concerts, a beast avatar comes and wreaks havoc, and Suzu becomes curious of the true identity of the beast and what he is going through. To some, there are similarities between this and Disney's version, but like I said, I was never once reminded of that movie, and the differences in this adaptation make it stand out and honestly so much better than Disney's. Mainly that instead of being a love story, it's a movie centered entirely around Belle, or Suzu in this case, a character who is stricken with so much grief, but is given a chance to let her true self out via the world of view. But her true self isn't just a good singer, she's also an overwhelmingly kind and compassionate person, going out of her way over and over to help the people around her, from confessing to crushes to dire and harrowing family situations. The animations, songs, and comedy are all spectacular, but that is the core of this movie, a coming-of-age story where someone broken learns that she has the power to change the world through kindness. That is empowerment at its finest, and it definitely has the potential to make a great impact on your life. And I've talked about this movie to death, so I'll just leave it at that.
It's been 60 weeks since I saw Vienna. A bandage and a white smile slept across my face. I'll pick up my high.
To some, it may not come as a surprise that I love the Violet Evergarden spinoff more than the continuation film, and that largely has to do with the differences between the emotional depth of these movies. The 2021 film is more grand and dramatic, as it is the finale of a widely beloved series, and a lot of the plot developments are major. The spinoff, however, is just a side story with little importance to the overall narrative, but the emotional moments are more quiet and introspective, and they largely show just how far Violet has come as a person, more so than the continuation film. One moment that always sticks with me in this movie is when Amy/Isabella comments on how caring and empathetic and kind Violet is, to which she responds with, "I'm not. I'm just doing what I've learned." That one sad moment of her downplaying her empathic ability is arguably one of the most hard-hitting moments in the entire franchise. But then there's the other component of this movie that isn't centered around Violet, the story of Amy and Taylor, two sisters who bond over unfortunate circumstances, but are later separated in order for them to be given a chance at life. And the rest of the film is Amy/Isabella's guilt over leaving her sister behind, and Taylor later on in life meets Violet to try and find her. The animation is just as beautiful as ever, the quiet and subtle moments are powerful, Benedict gets some development, and this movie found a way to use the technology plot point better than the continuation film, because it's for comedy and not drama. Also, Amy/Isabella is gay, right? Or at least bi? Honestly, she was a better fit for Violet than Gilbert ever was.
Oh, I love too much, and by such is happiness thrown away.
So, not a lot of people know about this movie, which is understandable since barely any advertising or clips exist anywhere, but it makes it kind of a shame since it just so happens to be available on Prime Video for anyone with a subscription to watch. On Happiness Road is a Taiwanese animated film following Xiaoqi, who returns to Taiwan after learning that her grandmother has passed away. And as she walks through the streets of her hometown, she reflects on her childhood as she grew up in a time when Taiwan was shifting from a dictatorship to a democracy after the death of Chiang Kai-shek. Up front, a big part of this movie's appeal is its plot and structure being a unique mesh of Persepolis and Only Yesterday, which is fitting because what kicked off the development of this film was when the director first watched Persepolis when she was in university. But there is more to this movie than just its political backdrop. Chi's entire entire life is both a joy and uncomfortable to follow, as the film follows many stages from her obliviousness to the world's struggles, her passions shifting from following her parents' footsteps to forging a new path for herself, desperately trying to escape her Taiwan life, and then seeing how her fears leak into her relationships with her family, friends, and her American husband. And it's more than just a trip down memory lane for Chi. It's days upon days of reflection over her entire life and wondering why where she is in life now is so disappointing. When she was a kid, she wanted to run off into the sunset with her prince. When she was a teen, she wanted to make a difference and change the world for the better. When she reached adulthood, she wanted to live in the US and live her own life. But now she realized she has not accomplished a single one of those goals. And she keeps asking herself, is it okay that I'm disappointing the past versions of myself? It's a quietly devastating subject that really hits home. But this movie isn't just poignant silence, because its comedy and characters are lovable and charming. I cite specifically Betty as an awesome best friend towards Chi, providing parenting advice for when the child she's expecting is eventually born. The animation has its rough moments, but it evokes a sense of childlike wonder in its imagery, especially in its multiple imagination sequences, which depict everything from simple childhood dreams to childish interpretations of what are actually harrowing conflicts between protesters and government involvement. While this movie doesn't have any real problems, there are some details that could be potentially personal irritants. Mainly the performance of whoever is playing the American husband, as well as the weird but not ineffective translation of the dialogue between him and Chi. Also, the grandma is a little annoying at times and doesn't play a huge role in Chi's later stages of life until the very end. Still, I'll admit I'm biased and am able to wave these minor details aside because I grew up in Taiwan, and even without that, I consider this one of the best animated movies of all time. It's funny, while at the same time emotionally devastating. The animation is stunning, and it is a tremendous love letter to Taiwan that I will always adore. And now for my top 5 animated movies of all time. And some may know that with the exception of one live action movie right now, these are the only films, period, that I have ever given a 10 out of 10 to. Films that mean so much to me personally that the experience I had watching them cannot be replicated anywhere else. So let's get to it. Out of every one of my childhood favorite animated films, WALL-E has always held a very special place in my heart. In fact, it was the movie that opened my eyes to the potential and wonders of animation and how stories can leave a long-lasting impact on people's lives. I don't think I'd be the same today, or even making movie reviews, if it weren't for this. A beautiful and gorgeous film about environmentalism, humanity, but more importantly, the nature of true love. WALL-E's curiosity leads him to collect and collect and collect over hundreds of years, but more than anything, he longs for a connection so he can share all of these experiences with someone. He doesn't fall in love with Eve because of the butterflies in his stomach. He's in love with Eve because she takes the time to learn about his experiences and spend time with him. Or at least that's what it eventually becomes. And Eve becomes inspired by WALL-E's curiosity and dedication to the point where she eventually is willing to throw her purpose away because she finds a new purpose in her love for WALL-E, even though WALL-E at that point knows what is best for her and the people of the Axiom. It's probably the best display of a romantic relationship in anything ever, with both partners taking equal sacrifices to make it work. And all of this is communicated through visual storytelling alone. These robots cannot emote on the same level as humans, plus they can't even talk. And the fact that they are more human and have more depth than so many other characters who can talk says something about how brilliant this movie is visually and writing quality wise. Then there is Define Dancing, one of my favorite scenes in anything ever. The music and animation work together beautifully to show such a high moment in both WALL-E and Eve's character journeys. Even the captain gets a time to shine. Otto again displays the horrific implications of AI, except instead of a system that desires to learn and grow to become more powerful, it's a system that strives to follow one directive only with zero regards for other people's lives. A perfect foe for our heroes. This movie is also super funny. Because a lot of the movie relies on visuals, the comedy is also primarily visual, and there are so many funny moments of Wall-E being a doofus. I love it. And I could go on and on about Wall-E, and I will sometime. Arguably, there's something to get out of this movie for everyone, whether it be to take better care of the environment, stop using AI for everything, and what it takes to make love work. Honestly, this is easily the best romance narrative, and I cannot get enough of it. I have adored it to bits for the longest time, and I always will. Among my top 5, Maquia definitely sticks out like a sore thumb. It's not made by my favorite director or produced under a widely acclaimed studio, but it is the directorial debut of a widely beloved writer in the anime industry, Mari Okada, and what she has put together is a beautiful and enthralling fantasy tale about war and tradition, but also about family and what it means to be a mother. Maquia is a member of a tribe of immortals, and she gets separated from them after a neighboring civilization comes to wipe out their kind. She comes across a baby whose parents got mugged and decides to take him in and name him Ariel, raising him as her own. It's a pretty bloated premise with a lot of moving parts, including the ongoing conflict between the immortals and the colonizers, Maquia's friend Layla getting captured and experiencing the deepest loneliness, and Maquia and Ariel traverse to many different places to avoid her lineage being found out. But Mari Okada has this way with how she writes these scenes. Every moment has some level of importance to the story and says so much about the characters, that even though they're on different sides or disagree on many things, deep down they still care about each other. Ariel's decision to join the army is out of a desire to protect his mother. Krim is driven to madness out of his love for Layla. Despite her love for Maquia and Krim, Layla forms an attachment to her daughter that drives her to dejection simply because she was the one who gave birth to her. There are so many heart-wrenching moments that speak to the harrowing fears of these characters, and there are just as many of these moments as there are moments of joy and wholesomeness and uplifting sensations. And then there's Maquia, the heart and soul of this entire film. I've said it before, but she is the best mother character in all of animation. Since she took Ariel in, she has done nothing but try again and again to provide for him and support him. And the whole story consists of her questioning if she played an important role in his life, only for him to tell her that he wouldn't be the same without her guidance. Arguably, this movie is Ariel's entire life viewed from the eyes of his mother. The joy in finally having someone to care for and share her life with, the work it takes to provide for him, learning all the responsibilities that comes with being a mother, the frustration when things don't work out followed immediately by the sincerest of apologies, the pain and loneliness when she has to let him go, and finally coming to the realization that she has been a wonderful mother the entire time. All of that conveyed with beautiful animation, fantastic use of colors for visual storytelling, a gorgeous score that swells in the final act, and especially the ending. And talking of that ending, it is one of the best in anything ever. I cry almost every time, and each rewatch reminds me of all the love my parents have given me over the years. It's stuck with me for a while, and it will always be one of my personal favorites. Followers of my channel know that this became an instant favorite of mine ever since I first watched it. And for good reason, one of the most beloved anime movies ever, and widely considered to be Naoko Yamada's finest work. The movie begins with a very uncomfortable series of events consisting of our main character, Shoya Ishida, and a bunch of his classmates bullying a deaf girl named Shoko Nishimiya. From the gossiping, to the guilt tripping, to the pranks, to the straight up physical abuse, the first act displays so many levels of bullying that are equally painful and traumatic for the victim. Many years later, however, Shoya has been burdened with a tremendous amount of guilt, and once he reunites with Shoko in high school, he tries everything in his power to make it up to her by bringing her old friends back together and healing the cracks that have formed in the past. Naoko Yamada's direction perfectly captures the anxieties that Shoya faces in his everyday life. The immense amount of guilt he feels seeps into his self-worth and his social skills, and he finds himself unable to make friends because he feels he's so worthless and harmful that he doesn't deserve them. The X's on everyone's faces showcasing who is a part of his circle are brilliant, and the camera almost always looking down puts us in the headspace of Shoya. Shoko's perspective is also beautifully fleshed out, with a tremendous level of visual storytelling due to the fact that she doesn't speak often. Her facial expressions, demeanor, and general approach to problems say it all. Not to mention, you can hear at some points in the soundtrack, one ear is more static than the other, putting us in Shoko's position once she goes completely deaf in one ear. Then the other characters are masterfully written too, from those just as guilt-ridden as Shoya or as hurt as Shoko, or even those who show an immense lack of self-awareness. This friend group shows the tragic effects childhood bullying can have on people. And one interesting and subtle feat of this movie is that it doesn't assign blame on a single person for all of the problems. The characters assign the blame themselves, but no point is ever made on who is solely responsible. In fact, it keeps the blame on who deserves it. The elementary school, mishandling the situation so bafflingly that these people are forever broken, to the point where some now believe their lives are worthless. But at the same time, this movie isn't just about reveling in the tragedies of harassment and suicide. These topics hit you hard at first, but the more you watch it, the more uplifting and inspiring the experience is. The entire point of the movie is how your life is worth living, no matter how many mistakes you have made or how many times you've been told it's worthless. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Everyone deserves some level of love and friendship, and everyone deserves to live on. To keep going no matter the squalls. Your disabilities do not define you, and neither does your past. Who you are at your core makes you the person you are, and as long as you stick to wanting nothing more than to be good, you can have the power to make it happen. A Silent Voice is a profound and soul-lifting film that is able to change lives for the better. It is immensely impactful, and I think there's something to take away for everyone. And you want to know what's crazy? This is no longer my favorite film of all time. There are 2 movies that this couldn't even come close to beating. So, what are they? I'm just as shocked as you are. I did not expect to love Wolfwalkers more and more as time went on, but I do love it to an insane amount because it is an earth-shattering masterpiece of a feature film. The story revolves around our 2 main characters, Robin Goodfellow and Maeve Ogmaktira, one a hunter, one a wolfwalker. Both want to chase their blissful impulses and calls to the wild, but their respective parents seek to protect them from the rule of the Lord Protector, causing rifts in their friendship and stifling dread to seep into their personalities that they will have to power through. On a visual level, this is some of the best animation I have seen in anything. The contrast between the sharp edges and broken perspectives of the township and the lush, wild, organic, and free-form depiction of the woods highlights the stark difference between the 2 environments, a prim and proper yet broken society of oppression and egotism put up against a natural, flowing, and beautifully imperfect world that feels so liberating to be a part in. You can even see the moment Robin changes into a wolfwalker when you notice her art style grows more sketchier and rougher, and the music is just breathtaking. I love Aurora, so hearing Running in the Wolves in the trailer and this movie was so awesome, and the actual scene in the film might be one of my favorites. The characters are some of the best I have ever seen. Robin and Maeve have such incredible chemistry and bounce off each other very well in their interactions, both bonding over wanting something more than the suffocating lives they've been given, and also overbred. But what is just as thrilling is to see how their drive to obtain freedom leads them to rebel against their parents, thereby rebelling against the Lord Protector. The movie makes a remarkable point in how oppressive and cruel rule leaks into relationships with people, creating false depictions between people of different backgrounds and even creating rifts within families and friend groups. And it shows these two empowering young girls rising up and fighting against this horrible person to get a chance at life without fear of being hated for who they are. It's a truly beautiful masterpiece of a movie that has become an instant modern classic since its premiere on Apple Plus in 2020. It is truly one of a kind. And to think this still isn't at the top of my list. Well, this is it. My favorite movie of all time. The culmination of cinema and animation. Naoko Yamada's magnum opus, what her entire career has been leading up to this whole time. This is everything I could have ever wanted in a movie and more. I genuinely do not know where to begin, because we could be here forever. The entire film spans 90 minutes or so, and it is literally just about one relationship between high school students Mizore and Nozomi, contextualized in fairy tales and band music based on said fairy tales. With a premise so bare bones and uneventful, it would take godlike execution to make it work. And it doesn't just work. It soars. Every single second and frame of this movie matters. Each shot is perfectly crafted to convey the emotions and headspaces of these characters, at times in a pleasant manner and other times suffocating. Mizore spends a lot of time wedged in between tight spaces visually, mostly during times where she feels alone or anxious of her future. Nozomi gradually goes from more open spaces to tight spaces like Mizore, showing her insecurities about her talents piling up again and again. Mizore's body language is more stiff and orderly, and while Nozomi's body language is more free and wild, she crosses her legs when she sits, signifying that she closes people off because of her fears. You also almost never see Mizore and Nozomi on screen at the same time, and whenever they are, a lot of the time they're on opposite sides of the screen, or one is out of focus and the other is in focus. Anytime they actually are together on the same side is when their bond is unobstructed by feelings of jealousy and inadequacy, when they are truly being the best of friends. The music also conveys this beautifully, not just the diegetic band music, but also the soundtrack. The soundtrack gets messy and garbled at times, reflecting how out of sync the two's relationship seems to be, and then it sounds gorgeous whenever they are in sync. The music they play for the piece is stifled and basic at first because Mizore doesn't understand what she is conveying, but when she does, the piece is beautiful and genuine. The entire film is technically breathtaking, and then we get to the relationship between Mizore and Nozomi, the real reason why I love this movie so damn much. From the beginning, these two girls obviously have a lot of history together and love each other very deeply. They are the best of friends, but something under the surface keeps them from communicating healthily. Mizore is a very blunt and straightforward person, but there are so many emotions underneath that she finds very difficult to express because she overthinks everything and wonders if she's good enough for Nozomi. And Nozomi is outgoing and fun, but as said, she closes herself off because she's insecure about how her talents in band may not match up to Mizore's. And this leaks into the way she talks, which she doesn't consider could come off as condescending. Despite all this, Mizore and Nozomi insist that they are best friends, but everyone else says otherwise. Natsuki and Yuko are good friends despite their banter, Midore and Hazuki are bonding happily, Kumiko and Reina, obviously, and even Mizore's connection with Ririka has an air of genuineness that just isn't present with her relationship with Nozomi. Even in the actual fairy tale of Liz and the Bluebird, their friendship is healthy because one is willing to let the other go so she can explore all the potential life paths before her, rather than just keeping her caged on a path to a toxic codependent bond. And it's after all of this that Mizore asks herself, am I really close with Nozomi? Are we comfortable sharing struggles and secrets with each other? Or will we keep saying we're best friends without saying a single word of deep meaning? Is this stifled feeling the last thing I want to experience before we eventually part ways? This is what Liz and the Bluebird is all about. This is a full display on what true friendship ought to be. A bond where you are free to be vulnerable and share your struggles without an air of fear or insecurity. A bond where every conversation has some depth or meaning to it. A bond where you know that you love that person and that they love you back. Not for your talents or what you do or what history you have, for who you are as a person. And to think, I haven't talked about every aspect of this movie I want to talk about. There are so many scenes and shots to geek about, so many tracks in the OST that I love to bits. The comparison between this and Sound Euphonium's take on Mizore and Nozomi's relationship is beautiful. The foreshadowing and payoff of a subtle narrative twist is clever and amazing, and I haven't even touched on my favorite scene in all of cinema, and it is just Mizore and Nozomi bonding over reflecting sunlight off a flute. I wish that I could talk about these now, but maybe when I eventually make that long analysis of this movie. At the end of it all, Liz and the Bluebird is perhaps the best animated film ever, and it is definitely my favorite film of all time. I wouldn't be the same today without it. And that, my friends, is the end of my top 30 favorite animated films of all time. It was really fun talking about these films, and I look forward to talking about them more in the future, especially the top 5, but as always, the list is subject to change, and updates will happen every now and then. But after all that, I'd like to know what your favorite animated films are down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.